Joel Eriksson Ek was re-signed in Minnesota like seconds after we finished recording last episode. So I figured we kind of go through this a little bit. Just because, like we did with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and there were some Oilers fans who did not appreciate the fact that we suggested that maybe Ryan Nugent-Hopkins wouldn't be the same player at 38 as he is right now. I got a few DMs from people being upset about it. However, that's usually what happens with hockey players. Yeah, just about that. Well, there was some name calling in there. But Joel Eriksson Ek's an interesting guy because, with respect to the Minnesota Wild, outside of Minnesota, they're not usually a top story. You don't usually hear about the Minnesota Wild until like Kirill Kaprizov came in, and then you're starting to see kind of highlight reel things. But they're a team that consistently makes the playoffs. Sometimes they even make it to round 2, but they don't ever seem to be able to get over the hump. They've had the same core for a long, long time. And it seems like with Eriksson Ek and then obviously Kaprizov and Fiala, they've got a new core, and there's a new look, a new more exciting look to the Minnesota Wild. So I guess starting at 8 years, $42 million. And the most interesting thing about the press release is that it actually stated how much money he's making. So $5.25 million for 8 years. What was your initial reaction to the deal, guys? And are you a fan of it?
I mean, well, first of all, if there's any team that should be bloody putting all the contract details out, it's the Minnesota Wild. You owe us. You owe the hockey world, gosh darn it. If I'm not mistaken, he finished, yes, just reading on Twitter, he finished 4th in Selke voting this year. So really good defensive center. Just the 30 points in 56 games, not mind-blowing, but he had a lot of goals. 19 in 56. And at 24 years old, he's the kind of guy you lock up to 8 years. All right? Not a guy pushing 30, a guy who's pushing 25. That I think is an enormous difference.
32, right, when he's done.
Yeah, and the only way, by the looks of his career trajectory, the only way this wouldn't work out is an unforeseen injury, which wouldn't be a problem for the Wild anyway.
Right.
You know what I mean? In
LTIR
terms of
stuff.
Cap space, I mean. Obviously, they'll be missing out on his talent. But no, it looks like a really good deal. And especially, let's say 5 years from now. How much is a second-line center, potentially even first-line center by then, worth? A lot more than $5 and a bit mil. This is a good deal. I like it.
Yeah, and it's a guy who's 24 and had his career high this year in goals and I think points as well, like 19 goals in 56 games. And Bill Guerin, he only had really 3 big things on his list for the offseason, and that was this contract and then Fiala and Kaprizov. So he's already got one down. The other 2, I assume, will get done very shortly. And then just worrying about the expansion draft. It's not a hard offseason for Minnesota, especially with 2 first-round picks. You got Pittsburgh's and your own.
That's right, from that Zucker deal, right?
Yeah. So Bill Guerin's going to have he's going to, by default, I think, have a good offseason just because it's so simple from the Minnesota perspective. And then they come back next year as a team that made the playoffs, and hopefully they sneak in again the next season.
To be fair to his predecessor, Paul Fenton, who just died over Kevin Fiala. Paul Fenton was David Poyle's assistant in Nashville. And when he was the GM for that tumultuous 13 months, he was the guy that made the big trade for Fiala because he was a huge fan. And everybody at the time was like, well, I don't know, Fenton, it hasn't really worked out. And look at that. It actually has. So at least one of the things he did was right. Maybe the way he managed it was not, but I think there's we got to give him
I hated that trade.
Now, I got a question for you in terms of signing contracts, because we ran into this problem with the Leafs, and admittedly, it's a different situation. But when you've got a guy like Kaprizov and you've got Fiala sitting on the sidelines, to me, you got to tackle the guy that's most likely to get offer sheeted, right? And if you're now, I know NHL GMs won't do this because they just don't really have the creativity or the balls to do it. But if a guy like Kaprizov
is ineligible for an offer sheet.
Oh, he is.
Yeah, he
really?
Can't be offer sheeted. He's a 10.2 contract, meaning he hasn't accrued the necessary amount of professional seasons required for Group 2 RFA status, which is when you can be offer sheeted.
Very fortunate.
They are. I was just gonna say, holy smokes! If he's a guy that's an RFA, I'm all over that.
He's good.
The key thing to look for in the expansion draft is they have 3 defenders with no movement clauses, which means you have to protect all of them. But the best one who does not have a no move clause is Matt Dumba.
And they've been trying to move on from him for a bit.
Yeah, so I wonder if this is the offseason they finally do it, and then it's easier to maybe go 7-3 or
so. Could you not I would look at trying trading Ryan Suter to Seattle. I feel like at 36,
both first round picks then.
At 36, that's the contract you want off your books at $7+ million.
And this is everyone going to yell at Jesse. He's got a no move. Who cares? No move doesn't actually mean anything. It just makes it harder. And it's Ryan Suter, so it's going to be hard anyway. He's got a $7.538461 million dollar cap hit for the next 4
till he's 40.
Oh baby, that is yucky poo poo. But this season he makes 6. And then the following season, 2, 1, and 1. So there could.
You've been talking to Leo too much.
Yucky poo poo. You know what? You know, a team that would make a lot of sense is the Edmonton Oilers.
Because they need a guy to play with Keith. You're right.
Duncan Keith. Imagine you have literally back-to-back Norris Trophy winners on your blue line. How sweet is that? Right?
Bro, that's
you could have the slowest blue re-sign Adam Larson and Chris Russell. Let's do it. Come on.
Stop trolling.
You could literally have 4 statues playing defense for you next year and Darnell Nurse.
You're mean.
Picking up the slack.
You're being mean.
What? No, it's not mean. It's not mean. It's true. You telling me Ken Holland wouldn't at least call about Ryan Suter? Ken Holland would call about Ryan Suter.
I would love to know.
Do you actually believe, seriously, do you believe that Ken Holland wouldn't call about Ryan Suter if he was available?
No, absolutely. No, he would.
You think that Ken Holland would call?
Oh, yeah.
Of course he would call. Of course he would call. If he's calling about Keith, he's calling about Suter.
I think most GMs would call just to really.
But Suter's not that. It's yucky poo poo beyond his performance.
His offensive numbers are good enough. I don't know what his possessions are. I assume they're dropping, as you know, because time is undefeated.
Yeah.
Unless you're Tom Brady. But yeah, that's I'm sure they would love to move on from that deal.
I don't know that they're going to be able to.
All right.
No, but like you said, they have a couple first round picks. Hey there, Seattle. Again, every Seattle is this just card that we pull out, and we're just like, here it is. Here's the fix-all card. Seattle. It's okay. We're gonna get out from under this guy. Seattle. How do we fix this problem? I don't know. How about Seattle? And just everything is Seattle. This is a much better expansion draft conversation though than we were having a few years ago when everything came back to they can't lose Brendan Leipzig. It's one of my less good.
Look takes. It up. You must look that up. Where Steve is legitimately upset about the Leafs losing Brendan Leipzig.
Yeah. Here's how you find it. Go look at any episode within a 3 or 4 month time span.
It's going to be Leipzig. What are they going to do? I'm upset that they lost.
This is a guy you can play anywhere in your lineup. You can play power play.
Yeah.
He's definitely not a jerk.
Yeah, he's got maybe 20, maybe 30 more games in the NHL left, and just totally a guy you can't miss out on.
Yeah, well,
and definitely
we're all wrong sometimes.
Yeah, that's all good. No, so I think obviously, okay, with Kaprizov's contract status not being RFA, then I guess you tackle Fiala first. Yeah. But
they're going to lose a good guy, I think, to the draft here.
I think they are too. But my question, just quickly on Kaprizov, is how do you begin? So Eriksson Ek's worth 5.25. You've seen years and years and years of him.
Mm-hmm.
How do you begin in a somewhat still depressed environment in terms of finances to model a contract? What's a comparable for Kirill Kaprizov? Small sample size, spectacular results. How long do you go? How much money? How high do you go?
The easiest comparable. So I came over as a much older rookie from Russia and won the Calder.
Panarin.
Artemi Panarin is the easy one.
But that was 5 years ago.
It was.
Or 6 years ago.
What percentage of the cap was it at the time?
That's a good question.
Let's see. That's a very good question. He got, it looks like 2 years, $6 million.
Mm-hmm. And that was 2014. So that would have taken him in 2016 because he won.
He was signed. December 2016.
Okay.
Almost 2017.
And he won the Calder over McDavid.
Yes, he did in 2015.
Mm-hmm. So he signed this in 2016, the extension, at $6 million, which was what at the time, percentage-wise?
Higher than it is now.
Well, what was the cap in 2016?
It actually, wow, cap friendly rules. It actually has that. I didn't know. 8.22%.
Of that cap
friendly rules, man. Like it's got everything. I did.
Pretty great.
Adam, I froze because I'm like, there's no way that information. Oh, it's literally right there in front of my face. 8.22. So what would that be this year? What would that be? Don't worry, I'm on it.
Mm-hmm. 79 point something.
Is 81.5 million times.
This is fun.
6.7.
See, you think
that's about right?
A couple years, 6.7 million?
A little less. 6.34.
But
It's
he's got he could say, listen, you might say my NHL sample size is small, but I also played in Russia and was this good in Russia too. Right?
Panarin could have said the exact same thing. It's a tough conversation because you're like, well, he signed for that several years ago, and then you go very much like my Seattle card. You go pandemic. It's a large card. It's like the size of an iPad. It doesn't belong in the deck at all.
By the way,
it's a legitimate card.
What's the story with Kaprizov, and why did he go in the 5th round? Was it that nobody thought he would come?
It could be that. Like it could be like Kuznetsov was a first-round pick for the Caps.
Mm-hmm.
Do they take him in the first round if they knew how long it would take him to come over? I don't know.
Right.
Interesting.
That's a pretty tough one. Kaprizov, that's a very good question.